You're tuned to the K-State Radio Network. Good to have you aboard once again for Agriculture Today. The Kansas Farm Management Association, out of the Agricultural Economics Department at K-State, has just put together its annual report on net farm income in Kansas. And this is based on actual data from actual producers from all around the state, participants and members in the Kansas Farm Management Association. Each year we have the good fortune of visiting not only with the administrator of the association, K-State's Kevin Herbel, but with several of the economists that serve the KFMA at the various locations around the state of Kansas, and we've gathered for our annual roundtable discussion, to put it that way. First, Kevin, we'd ask you to set the tone for our discussion here. How would you, in general, as you look at this mass of numbers that you and your team have put together, how would you characterize what this year's net farm income report has to say about the state and the condition of the Kansas farm economy?
Sure, Eric. Certainly very much a year, as many of them are, a year of much variability, a year that in a lot of ways I think came out with net income numbers that are more positive, creating a little bit of maybe some cautious, optimistic feeling in some ways with some of the numbers, certainly relative to livestock incomes around the state, certainly impact of some positive yields. Along with that, though, still facing a time where we've got generally low commodity prices. But even with that said, we had a lot of opportunity within those prices during the year. And as we look at some of the higher net income farms compared to the lower net income farms, some very definite differences in what they did receive for those commodity prices during the year. Pointing out the importance, as we always do, and I think we'll look to mention this at the start as well as the end of this interview, the importance of each farm knowing their numbers, understanding those numbers, using those numbers as they make decisions on their farm. We're going to speak of net income levels of different areas of the state, some things with different farm types. Those are purely what we're going to present them as, averages of groups of farms. The reality is the actual numbers on those individual farms have a lot of variability, and some farms are in a strong financial position. Some farms are in a financial position of much concern, and it's important for each producer to know and understand where they are at and be making decisions based on that environment and not just the numbers that we present as the averages.
You've stressed, Kevin, the variability, and for an express purpose, because as one looks at the general statewide net farm income number for 2017, as the association is putting it out, it is actually up from that of 2016. But you want folks to understand the caveats that go with that.
Certainly. Our average net farm income for 2017 does reflect just under $63,000. It's $62,944 for the state level numbers, and that is up from our updated 2016 number, which is $46,717. Now, putting that kind of in perspective of what all's there, 31% of those farms at the state level had a negative net farm income in 2017. And probably the area where some of the drought effects had the most impact across the whole association would have been in north central Kansas, where we had a drop to $28,950 for the year. The other association that went down was in southeast Kansas. They actually dropped from $110,000 down to $102,671 in 2017. The other four with the increase, the smallest amount of increase was in northeast Kansas, where we went from just under $49,000 to $54,418 for 2017. South central Kansas went from a negative net farm income in 2016 to up to $30,517 in 2017. And then as we look out west, southwest Kansas went from just over $39,000 in 16 to a little over $78,000 in 2017, and Northwest went from just above zero in 2016 to just over $94,000 this last year.
Well, that sets the table for our discussion with the individual economists from the associations around the state. So we'll turn to them now. And we'll do this in thirds from western Kansas, then central Kansas, and finally eastern Kansas before we bring Kevin back in for some wrap-up comments on what the report has to say. Joining us, first of all, here from northwest Kansas is the economist with the KFMA there, Mark Wood, and from southwest Kansas, Sandy Myers. Mark, we'll start with you. When we look at the Northwest, as Kevin said, the number there is pretty impressive. In 2017, $94,000 average net farm income compared to just shy of $3,000 in 2016. So to what do you attribute that considerable improvement?
Most of the improvement is going to be attributable to increased production. We had excellent dryland corn yields. We had excellent irrigated corn yields. In our association, the average farm gross revenue was just over $900,000. $440,000 of that is corn exclusively. So corn represents 48% of our accrual value of farm production in our association. The acreage shift from wheat to corn has continued, will continue, and many producers are exclusively corn producers. And that's really radical to be continuous corn in northwest Kansas. But with the rainfall we had, reasonably cool temperatures at pollination, that gave us some exceptional yields. Price increased slightly. Our basis was slightly improved. We probably gained 20, 25 cents on average. That doesn't seem a lot, but on 120, 130 bushel to acre, it adds dollars to that bottom line.
The livestock side in northwest Kansas, was it reasonably healthy as well?
We saw improvements in all the livestock enterprises. The cow-calf producers, if they were fairly careful with their cost structure, they showed a good positive return above variable costs. And we had excellent feed production, so we had plenty of volume. We've also had fairly mild winters where we've had open enough winters that cattle can go on the crop residue, and so cow-calf producers showed improvement. The best improvement were in the backgrounders, and even in the finishers they showed a good return.
Sandy, want to bring you in and talk about southwest Kansas. Once more, a marked improvement over 2016's number when you look at 2017 in the southwest. As Kevin noted, $78,000 and change. That was almost double from the previous year. So what was the driver in your area?
Honestly, looking into it, we as an association had quite a few challenges to overcome. We had a blizzard in May, which didn't help the wheat any. Then the same wheat got hit by mosaic. Right. We had hail that tried to wipe out corn systems. Of course, we had drought, we had fires, we had the same bad prices everybody else did. So in a way, it's kind of miraculous that we can double our net farm income. Looking at it, as an association, we were able to cut down on our overall liabilities. We cut down on our family living expense from $70,000 down to $64,000. The overall expense ratios went down from 92% down to 84%, so our farmers were really trying to cut back on what they could control. I think that helped out a lot. The main difference between our high 25 and low 25 was our yields. The difference between our top producers was about 20 bushel a milo, and then for wheat it went from 42 bushel an acre up to 55 an acre, which is low for us, but with all that we had to deal with, that was still an acceptable yield. We had a lot of our farmers get tired of paying storage, and they sold whatever they could as soon as it came out of the field, and that turned out to be one of the best marketing strategies that the farmers could have done this year for us.
So, in essence, your producers, with all the hardships, were able to manage through fairly successfully, strategically, to put it that way.
Right. We're made of some pretty tough stock down in the Southwest, and the last couple of years are pretty much proven that we can make it through anything.
So, to the both of you, when you look at the general solvency of your producers as we slug our way through 2018, then fairly decent footing for your producers right now, given all?
The Northwest Association, the thing that probably concerns me the most is that $94,000 net farm income sounds really good, but our debt ratios did not improve. Actually, in many cases, they deteriorated. And I looked at our top 25 that made $450,000, but their debt increased. So they're borrowing, they're increasing their debts. At the same time, they're increasing their assets even faster. So in northwest Kansas at least, the most profitable group of farms tends to be the aggressive growers. We still have producers pushing to grow the farm size, and I think in Southwest they may have decided that a more conservative approach is wise, and I don't disagree with that, and sometimes it makes me uncomfortable how aggressive the producers can be, but when the weather favors that, they were rewarded last year for it.
Sandy?
I'd have to concur that Southwest is more conservative on our strategy, but it seemed to have worked for us this year. Solvency issues, our debt to asset liability did go up just slightly, but it's still within an acceptable range. And so I'm honestly not worried about that right now.
Mark Wood, Northwest Kansas, and Sandy Myers from Southwest Kansas, Kansas Farm Management Association. We'll talk with more of the K-State economists who put this together. After this break, you're listening to Agriculture Today.
Did you eat today? Thank a farmer. A way to get more involved in agriculture is through 4-H and FFA. Through 4-H and FFA, we have been given multiple opportunities to grow as leaders and learn more about agriculture.
You can learn skills related to jobs, public speaking skills, and you get the opportunity to travel around the country and meet new people.
If you want more information about getting more involved in 4-H and FFA, visit them on their websites at kansasffa.org and kansas4h.org.
You're tuned to Agriculture Today, where we're into a conversation featuring staff economists with the Kansas Farm Management Association out of K-State. Once more, the association posting its report on 2017 net farm income. Just before the break, you heard from two of the economists from western Kansas. Let's now move over to the central part of the state and pick through the numbers there. Bob Kohman is the executive economist for the KFMA in north central Kansas, and Clay Simons is his counterpart in south central Kansas. And Bob, to you first. Your area, north central Kansas, one of the two among the 6 areas in the state which registered a drop-off in net farm income from 2016 to 17, down to just shy of $29,000. That was off from $36,000 in 16. And you say that by and large, that was a product of the dry weather that your producers endured there in north central Kansas.
Well, I would say it absolutely played a role. We had 102 bushel corn, 34 bushel soybeans last year, and then 17 bushel double crop. And we had a lot of soybeans grown last year because most of us would remember that back in 2016 we had a record soybean crop in north central Kansas. Really carried the day for us, and so people jumped on board with beans, and then it really just didn't pan out for us last year, unfortunately. So, between those things, we really did have a very good wheat crop last year. Unfortunately, with average price of about $3.90 on the wheat crop, the wheat crop was good, but the overall gross revenue just wasn't good enough to really make things go for us as well as we'd like. So we definitely need to have some things turn around for us. We've got average family living around $70,000, so when you're making $35,000 and spending $70,000, if you don't have other resources available, it can really become a pretty serious issue.
How did the livestock enterprise fare then last year?
Well, yeah, just like what Mark and Sandy said earlier, we definitely saw some improvements in the livestock side. Cow-calf was better. We do have quite a few guys that do backgrounding in certain counties that we work in, and so guys that were buying and selling calves and feeding them saw some nice returns. Really, all of our cattle enterprises saw returns above variable cost, which was an improvement from the last couple of years, and so that definitely helped. We do have a few dairy farms that we work with, and they actually had a better year in 17 than 2016, so it was nice to see that. That actually, we had a reduction of our gross crop value of about $35 an acre. The livestock side kind of picked that up, and so that's really kind of why we ended up being about where we were the previous year.
Clay Simons, South Central Kansas, once again, well, a nice rebound from 2016, where it was a negative year in 16, $3,000 in the red, $30,000 in the black last year.
It's a great improvement, Eric. We've had 2 years of negative net farm income down in South Central Kansas, and so you have to be very thankful for the government payments that we've gotten, because we had, on average in our association, about $37,000 in government payments that our members received. And so it doesn't take a whole lot of math to say that's really where our profit came from on average. Wheat yields were pretty good. We were probably in, about the 55 bushel range, and prices were a little bit better. Fall crops, on average, helped us out, and really what rebounded compared to the previous couple of years were our irrigators did a lot better on average as well. They were more profitable. So when you're dependent on wheat, it's kind of tough down in our part of the world, but it was still better than what we had. But like Bob said, our family living really hasn't changed that much. We were in the $70,000 range on family living, and so if you're going to cover that cost, there either has to be we need more profit on the farm, or somebody has to have a pretty good job in town somewhere.
And the cattle enterprise was doing well? Just
like everywhere else, our backgrounders, especially the first part of the year, did really, really well. Cow-calf guys were a little more profitable. And our dairy farmers are smaller in size, but they really had a relatively profitable year too.
So again, to the both of you, and we'll go back to Bob with this, cost management on the part of your producers, and that's been harped upon the last several years since roughly 2012, when the economy in farm country started to drift lower. Have you seen your producers amp up their game in that area?
Well, yeah, I think machinery costs are something that's been addressed a considerable amount the last few years, and I think our producers are not as actively investing in new equipment or new to them equipment. We've kind of seen that level out the last few years. I think people are doing whatever they can to try to help save those dollars. And then just on the crop production side, the crop input side, people going out and shopping around for inputs, trying to find whatever deals they can, certainly making every effort they can to be as efficient as they can on the cost side.
Yeah.
Well, and there's been some improvement where you can get it, but a lot of these guys have kind of squeeze their costs down really as low as they can right now. We're still seeing working capital evaporate. Our debt to asset ratios were pretty consistent right around the 0.18 level, but in our current ratio was right at the borderline acceptable range of 2.0, which would mean that they have $2 of assets for every dollar of debt currently. And so we're seeing that kind of cash crunch still affect them right now, and I'm kind of getting to the point to where that's as much of a function of income as it is expense. We've got those expenses squeezed down as tight as we can, I think.
Again, the KFMA's Bob Kohman from North Central Kansas and Clay Simons from South Central Kansas. Lastly, we'll share the tale of how the economics shaped up in the eastern part of the state, northeast and southeast Kansas, according to the KFMA Net Farm Income Report. And joining us from the southeast is Scott Laird, from northeast, Craig Althauser. And let's start with you, Scott. In the southeast, as we noted earlier, there were 2 of the 6 divisions that finished with a lower net farm income in 17 compared to 16, and yours was one of them, although it wasn't a dramatic fall off, was it?
No. We've been fortunate in the southeast that in 10 of the last 11 years, we've had over $100,000 in our net farm income, and we were able to stay above that level again at $103,000 this year. So while it was a little bit of a drop, we still feel pretty good about where we were at.
So what were the strongholds for your farmers down there, economically speaking?
Well, the last couple of years, the thing that has really helped us has been our soybeans. Our yields on our full season soybeans were about 43 bushels per acre, and even the double crop beans were basically 37. Still strong yields and some reasonably good prices, and that really helped carry the day.
And the livestock, once again, doing well, as has been reflected elsewhere in the state.
Right. I think similar to all around the state, we do have a significant amount of backgrounding. Those producers did pretty well at a net sale gain of about $750 per animal. And so that nice combination of both the soybeans and the livestock, and especially the cattle, kept us at a good, strong income level.
Craig, what about northeast Kansas? And net farm income in 17 was $54,000 plus. it was sort of steady as she goes, wasn't it?
Absolutely, Eric. And I would tell the story of Northeast Kansas in very similar fashion to what Scott just said, describing Southeast. 2017 was very similar in our area to what 2016 was. We're showing some net profit, not as much as we'd like long term, not as much as we frankly need long term to cover family living and taxes and service debt and so forth. But we're buying time to get through what we're experiencing here with the commodity prices and the cost structure we have. But a good year with cattle profits, especially the feeders in the first half of the year, really, really good year. And then also, other than the extreme northwest part of our area, we're blessed with some really fantastic soybean yields last year for the second year in a row as well. I'm optimistic, but we're treading water right now. We haven't turned the corner, but we are buying time.
Well, that leads to the blanket question to bring up to the both of you. What worries each of you most about where we're at economically with your producers?
We haven't really, after 2015, we haven't really lost equity yet. Maybe a little. We did in 15, but the last 2 years we haven't really. I look at the last 2 years and I see some things that happened that have really blessed us with some, as Scott mentioned earlier, some late summer rains that maybe we don't traditionally get. I think of a year that might come when we don't get bushels, when we don't have above average yields at least. And for the crop producers out there, that could be a real problem.
Scott?
Yeah, I think I'd probably echo that. Because good weather has been such a benefit to us, that won't be there every year. And so our assets have been going up, but our debt has increased a little bit too, which is fine as long as we have these good years. But if we would have a downturn at the same time that our debt has increased, that could be a factor. And I do know that we have seen our liquidity, our current ratio, and some of our other measures have been going down. So if they're with some kind of downturn in weather or something like that, making those interest payments and loan payments, that goes from being no problem right now to could very quickly be a problem. And so that you always kind of worry about that.
Scott Laird from Southeast Kansas and Craig Althauser from Northeast Kansas. And in a few moments, we'll return to round out this look at the new report from the Kansas Farm Management Association on 2017 Kansas net farm income. This is Agriculture Today. For 25 years, K-State Research and Extension's Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services has been providing a no-cost, confidential place to call in and visit with an agricultural lawyer. Our experts are available to help you producers handle legal and financial issues. Explore your options and generate solutions. Call us at 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. This is the K-State Radio Network, and you're listening to Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. And again, we've devoted the program today largely to a look at the brand new report out of the Kansas Farm Management Association on net farm income in the state for 2017, based on actual farm records of KFMA members. Just to mention once again, the statewide average net farm income in 17 was just short of $63,000. That was up from nearly $47,000 the previous year. So we'll wrap up this overview by turning once again to the administrator of the Kansas Farm Management Association, Kevin Herbel, for some concluding thoughts and your takeaways from what your area economists have shared with us right here on the condition of our farm income around Kansas. There are several bullet points that you say leap to mind, Kevin.
Yes, Eric, I do think so. And, it all comes down, again, I'm going to, as I said, we'd come back to this again at the end, the importance of each producer knowing and understanding where they're at. There was certainly some words of cautious optimism from some of the economists, certainly words of some concern of some things that we're looking at. I think for each producer to focus on working capital, Know and understand your working capital. What that is the difference between your current assets, which that's your cash and inventories that are going to be readily turned to cash in the next year, and the difference between those and your current liabilities, the things that you owe to others in the next year. Difference between those working capital, that has been, in general, eroding across farms around the state. One of the ratios we look at is looking at working capital as compared to operating expenses plus interest. Back 5 years or so ago, that number was in the upper 90%, and this last year it's around 64% of the working capital relative to the operating expenses and interest. And I think a need for each farm to understand where that's at. Take steps to solidify or improve your working capital when you can. Certainly, as we often say, and we've talked some, that a lot of the improvements in income to some extent came because of good yields, but it does not get away from the need for each producer to know and understand their cost of production. I think even though good production is very important, and how we handle things from that standpoint, but knowing your cost of production for a number of different reasons. One is, and we have heard this say a number of different times, but you can't manage what you don't measure, right. And the importance of knowing your cost of production so that you can manage those and make improvements. Looking to take steps within that of managing your purchasing of inputs in a way, if you can identify ways to do that in an improved or more efficient manner. From the income side, certainly knowing your cost of production can help you be better able and better prepared to take advantage of pricing opportunities. We've had during recent months a number of different opportunities to receive improved prices on the grains that we're producing, livestock as well, compared to what we had in the last year. And are you in a position to be ready to take advantage of those? Those who know and understand their cost of production are much better able to take advantage of those pricing opportunities when they present themselves. I'll refer to that often as preparedness and opportunity. You can't always make opportunities. Sometimes we can make opportunities come up. But what we can do is take steps to be prepared so that when those opportunities are there, we can move on them. Certainly as well, management of risk. One of the things we've heard is the increased levels of debt on some of the farms, and even with the positive net farm income that we had, the overall debt level on the average farm went up about $15,000 again here in 2017. Increased debt means increased risk. We've also heard and seen, and I've just indicated with this decreasing or eroding working capital, that leads to decreased liquidity, decreased ability to make decisions and move on those decisions that a producer might want to. Again, leading to increased risk. And so we've got this level of risk that we need to manage. The idea that our grain prices are at a point that if we have average or below average yields, it's going to be really difficult to cover the cost of production for most producers. And so a need to be prepared to respond to that. And I guess maybe a final thing would just be to mention some things regarding living expenses. Many producers will keep records as they need to for the farm income, the farm expenses, not as many keeping track of their living expenses and knowing and understanding where they're at. Increasing health insurance costs, just a number of different things from the living expense standpoint, and how does, on your farm, how does your living expense level compared to the income that you're producing? Are there adjustments, changes you need to make? Do you know where those things are at? Our average family living expense on KFMA farms was actually at the lowest level this last year as what it had been since 2011. So as our incomes have been coming down, there is some management of those expenses on the average. And yet, just like our farm incomes are all over the place, the family living expenses are all over the place as well. And knowing and understanding where that's at is important.
A load of things for producers to consider. And once more, you and your team of economists have spent the last few days and even weeks hammering out the net farm income report for 2017 from the Kansas Farm Management Association records. And the information will be out for anyone's review and reference very soon now, will it not?
That is correct, Eric. We are posting today or shortly thereafter the summary reports, and the executive summary in particular, will begin being posted to the agmanager.info website and be available to look at, as well as some further information and studies of that information, which will be taking place as well.
And it's a great resource of information, particularly as we talk with producers often as we get together about benchmarking where they're at vis-a-vis their counterparts around the state. So take full advantage of that, producers. Kevin, we'll look forward to having you back in the not-too-distant future, and we will dive even deeper into the numbers by farm enterprise and several of the other important breakouts from this report. Until then, many thanks to you.
Thank you, Eric.
Once more, that's Kevin Herbel of the Kansas Farm Management Association. He's the administrator of that service out of the Agricultural Economics Department at K-State, along with the area economists who contributed to this conversation from Northwest Kansas, Mark Wood, Southwest Kansas, Sandy Myers, from the north central part of the state, Bob Kohman, South Central Kansas, Clay Simons, from Southeast Kansas, Scott Laird, and from Northeast Kansas, Craig Althauser, as they have covered some of the highlights of the just-released 2017 Kansas Net Farm Income Report from the association. Be looking for it in full at agmanager.info. You're tuned to Agriculture Today. After this final break, our K-State horticulture segment for this week, we'll have the very latest for you on bugs in lawn and garden with our next guest here on the K-State Radio Network. Stay with us.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Coming your way now on Agriculture Today, our weekly segment on horticultural matters of interest. And across the way once more is horticultural entomologist with K-State Research and Extension, Raymond Cloyd, who's been gathering notes from the garden and the yard and will pass along some of the more common things we're seeing out there that you homeowners and gardeners would want to be alert to. Raymond, this appears to be shaping up as a banner year for ticks. They have come on strong in the last few days, actually.
They sure have, Eric. You know, when the rains and all that vegetation coming up, the ticks out there are waiting for somebody to walk by or a host and latching on. Just a little bit of background, you know, Kansas has a series of ticks, but they do have the two major ones, the American dog tick, which is the vector of Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and, of course, the black-legged tick, also known as the deer tick, which is the vector of Lyme disease. When you do go outside, it's best to use a repellent, such as DEET or permethrin. Now, permethrin is one you cannot put on your skin. You put on your clothes. But when you're going out wooded areas, if you're jogging or taking a walk, be sure to protect yourself. Put your pant legs into your socks. Wear white socks. When you come home, check over your body, your clothing, and if you do have a tick embedded in you, the best procedure, listen to this, is to take tweezers, put them near where the head is under the skin, and gently pull it out. Don't jerk it around and don't add anything, because if that happens and the head breaks off, then you run the risk of bacterial infection. So just gently pull it out. And then you want to get the tick identified in the event it is the American dog tick or the black-legged tick or deer tick, and then put some type of a hydrogen peroxide or whatever, disinfect it so you don't get some type of secondary infection. But yeah, right now we're getting some samples and getting calls about ticks out there. Check your pets too, your dogs out there. If you haven't treated them with the typical Advantage or Frontline or what you take the vet, be sure to check your dogs over too, because they could also have ticks, and if you pet your dog or hug it, you can have ticks latch onto you.
It's not just in the woody areas. Those that are conducting yard work, mowing even, certainly wandering around in the garden, the flower bed, you can contract ticks likewise just as handily.
Absolutely, Eric. That's why you be very cognizant to go out there when you come in, check yourself over, wash your clothing. Yes, this is it's turning out to be an interesting year for ticks.
And to wear that repellent when at all possible. That's very
absolutely,
wise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those disease conditions that you described are not to be trifled with, either one of them. So,
and if somebody has a question, go to your doctor. If you have any questions, you can send the ticks to us. We have a diagnostician, and we can verify whether it is one of the vectors of diseases or not.
Well, hopefully that tick pressure will ease up, but we're just starting the summer season, so likely it'll be around for a while. Ants and termites making their move as well, and this always gets homeowners a bit ill at ease when they see what they think might be termites migrating indoors.
Yeah, actually, both termites and ants are swarming right now. We call the reproductive swarmers. They do this in mid-spring, and because of the cool weather we've had, things were delayed. And most of them are going to die anyway. But some will, the male will mate with the female, die, and then the female ant termite will start establishing a colony in the ground or in a stump, depending on if it's the ant termite. So don't get excited. But the thing to remember is there is a difference. The ants are going to have bent antennae. There'll be a narrow constriction between the thorax and the abdomen, which is the second and third parts of the insect, and the forewings are longer than the hind wings for an ant. Termites are they do not have bent antennae. They're fairly straight looking with no distinctive groove or narrow area, and other wings are the same length. So again, don't get too excited at this point. Most of them will die, but be aware this is the time of year that they start swarming.
And if they are, in fact, entering your home, either way, ants or termites, you want to exclude them somehow and find where they're entering, first of all, right?
Exactly. And, well, of course, our always is prevention, exclusion, sealing cracks and crevices in buildings. If they do come in, vacuum them or sweep them out as soon as possible. But, yeah. But those are the best ways to deal with them.
Well, Raymond, you said you wanted to bring up for a few moments here hummingbirds making their migration. Now, these are birds. They're not insects.
Right, yeah.
There's a tie-in here in as far as accommodating hummingbirds and making sure that they have a chance to pollinate flowers and other plants without hazard to them, right?
Yeah, hummingbirds. I study birds in my spare time. I study when I have spare time. But basically, hummingbirds are just part of the ecosystem, and they're really a really fun thing to watch for kids when they come in. People put up these hummingbird feeders, and one thing we always recommend is hummingbirds tend to be attracted to red flowers because they have, through their evolution, have acquired the knowledge that red flowers produce a lot of nectar, which you're feeding upon. And of course, people put out these hummingbird feeders, and we recommend about a 1-to-4 sugar solution. Don't use sweetener or anything like that, but a 1-to-4 sugar solution, mix it together, heat up, let it cool down, and then put it in there, and that'll serve as a food source for them. Now, what you don't want to do is when you clean those, don't use a soap because you may leave a residue and things like that. But, get these hummingbird feeders, read the directions, and when the hummingbirds are coming around, it's always fun to see them in action.
If one, Raymond, has unwanted insects on their plantings outside, does one need to be careful about treating those insects? Would such a treatment put the hummingbird in harm's way?
That's a good question, Eric, and generally not. I mean, the hummingbird, the mouth part is such that it feeds on the nectar of flowers, and that's what they're designed for, evolution. So minimal effect. Now, you don't want to spray a pesticide when the hummingbirds are active, for sure, especially a broad-spectrum contact. So if you have any questions about hummingbirds, a garden center nursery is a source. They actually carry these hummingbird feeders that you can buy.
And this last topic, we will get into it in some more detail next week, Raymond, because that's when it'll finally be time to address this problem in full. But bagworms, you're getting the perpetual questions yet about, is it time to treat?
Oh, well, we're getting calls, and if you can hold on and wait for a little bit, remember the cool weather in April and March has delayed the egg hatch, but as we get warmer weather, it will happen. And so one of the questions I get is, can I spray anything preventatively? And the answer is no. The bagworms have to be there, and then once they are starting to go, you have to spray once a week for about 4 weeks, because as they balloon in on other areas and those eggs hatch, you have to keep the pressure on with some type of material to suppress their populations.
So be patient for at least another week or so. And in fact, next week we will lend more detail in as far as carrying out your comprehensive and effective bagworm control on your landscape evergreens. Raymond, we'll touch base next week. Thanks for coming over.
I look forward to it, Eric.
Another update on insects in lawns and gardens from Raymond Cloyd, horticultural entomologist, K-State Research and Extension. And that brings our Thursday edition to a close. As always, we appreciate you being along with us and hope you'll be right back here tomorrow to rejoin us. Until then, Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.